Have you ever noticed how we accumulate things hoping to feel complete, but end up only more suffocated? I spent years buying, storing, filling every corner of my home and my life, until the day I found myself sitting on the floor of my apartment in Los Angeles, surrounded by objects that no longer spoke to me. That is when I understood. Having a lot is not a sign of abundance. It is a prison disguised as achievement. Before we continue, I want to extend an invitation. If you are here seeking a life with more lightness, elegance, and intention, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a like. Because what we are going to talk about today is not about decoration, it is about freedom. The cost of accumulation. It was when the financial crisis threw me to the ground that, curiously, I found real ground. I realized I had spent years building an identity based on what I owned. And when that was gone, I had to ask myself, who am I without all of this? The answer came slowly, but it came. I started applying what I learned in Japan, danshari, the practice of refusing, discarding, and letting go. It is not about throwing things away just to throw them away. It is about choosing what stays and having a solid reason for it. I created a ritual. I picked up each object in the house and asked, do you serve a purpose? Are you beautiful? Do you tell a story worth keeping? If the answer was no to all three questions, that item had no place in my life. And look, it was liberating. In the end, I kept 1/3 of what I had and gained twice the piece. Today, I keep only a few pieces of jewelry, each one with meaning. I do not wear all of them, but when I do, I know exactly why that piece is there. That is luxury, not having too many options, but having the right ones. The beauty of enough. There was a time when I thought the more I had, the more prepared I would be for any situation. 20 pairs of nearly identical shoes, 15 coats in case it gets cold, 10 sets of bed linens for guests who never came. Until one of my trips to Japan, when I volunteered in regions affected by the earthquake and tsunami, I met a woman who had lost almost everything. She showed me her rebuilt house, tiny, with only the essentials. And she told me something I never forgot. When you have little, you know exactly what matters. Since then, I adopted the concept of harahachibu, which I learned from my grandmother. It is the practice of eating until you are 80% satisfied, not until you burst, but until the point where you are still light. I applied this to everything. My wardrobe has 33 pieces that combine with each other since the crisis of 2008. My pantry has only essential items. My house has only 4 bath towels, 2 for me, 2 for guests. And I do not miss anything. Actually, I feel the opposite. I feel abundance. Because when you stop chasing more, you finally get to appreciate what you already have. When less becomes more, and it is not a cliché. I grew up in a house where having was synonymous with being well. My mother saw beauty in everything and wanted everything. Overflowing closets, endless collections. Always something new to complete what was already too complete. And it was only when she became fragile after a serious illness that she realized the fatigue did not come only from the body, but from the weight of managing so much excess. It was during that time that we started talking for real. I had already returned from Japan years ago, but I carried with me those 5 years of silent learning. Between 1987 and 1992, I lived in Kyoto and Tokyo with my grandmother Akiko, a woman who made less a form of respect, for herself, for time, for things. She did not accumulate. She chose. The Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi teaches that beauty lies in the imperfect, the incomplete, in what ages with dignity. It is not about having a flawless house, but about having a true house. A wooden table with marks of time, a cracked vase that was repaired with gold, the kintsugi technique, which transforms scars into art. The small gestures that change everything. I have a ritual that I practice every day when I enter my house. I take off my shoes at the genkan, the traditional Japanese entrance, and organize them side by side, with respect. I do not throw them in the corner. I do not leave them scattered. Because those shoes carried me all day. They deserve to be treated with gratitude. This may seem silly, but it is not. It is an exercise in awareness. When you treat objects with respect, you are practicing mo tai nai, the Japanese concept of non-waste. It is not about being cheap. It is about valuing what you have. My kitchen works with few high-quality utensils. Cast iron pans that I will pass on to my son Kenji one day. Japanese knives that I sharpen regularly. A few glass containers with bamboo lids to store food. And look, I cook every day. I do not miss anything. My father taught me from an early age. Good ingredients do not need much to shine. A ripe tomato, quality olive oil, sea salt. Done. That is luxury. And it is accessible. The empty space that welcomes. The Japanese concept of ma represents the empty space that gives meaning to what is around it, an essential principle of minimalism that values pause and breath in environments. It is not absence. It is intentional presence of nothing. I learned this one Monday when I went to the farmer's market at 7:30 in the morning. It is not just about buying vegetables. It is about the ritual, the silence of the still empty street, the vendor who already knows what I am going to ask for, the basket that returns home with only the essentials of the week. This space, this planned emptiness, gives me clarity for the rest of the day. The dining table here at home is not always decorated. Most days, it is empty. And do you know why? Because when I place a single ceramic bowl with seasonal fruit, it transforms. The simple gains importance. The ordinary becomes poetry. Now, contrast this with your friend who has the table always full. Candles, trays, napkin holders, arrangements, frames leaning against the wall. So many objects that you do not even know where to rest your glass of water. That is not abundance. It is materialized anxiety. The house as a mirror of the soul. There is a phrase I always repeat. A messy house is a disorganized mind. And I am not talking about perfection. I am talking about intentionality. Because when you look around and see piles of paper, drawers that do not close, objects without a place, this reflects something internal. Once I went to visit a client for an organization consultation. She greeted me apologizing for the mess. She said she was going through a difficult time, and when I started talking to her, I realized she was not going through a difficult time. She had been living in one for years. Her house was not just disorganized, it was suffocating. Each room told a story of giving up, clothes that no longer fit, but that she kept in case she lost weight, gifts she did not like, but did not have the courage to discard, broken objects waiting for repair for months. We spent an entire day talking about each item, and do you know what happened? She cried. Not because she was getting rid of things, but because, for the first time, she was allowing herself to choose. She was saying no to the version of herself that would one day be different, and yes to the version of herself that existed now. 3 months later, she sent me a photo. The house was empty, but not cold. It had few pieces of furniture, but all meaningful. And she wrote to me, "Naomi, for the first time in years, I can breathe inside my own house." The difference between luxury and ostentation. The quiet luxury movement gained strength in recent years as a response to the fatigue of exaggerated ostentation, valuing discreet quality instead of flashy logos. But this is not news. It is just the West rediscovering what the East has always known. True luxury does not shout. I remember a journalist friend who, for years, bought designer bags to show she had made it. Until one day, tired of being recognized by the brand she carried, she sold everything. She bought a single artisanal leather bag. No logo. No fuss. And do you know what she told me? "Naomi, for the first time, when someone compliments my bag, they are seeing the bag, not its price." Brands like Loro Piana and Brunello Cucinelli represent this luxury that whispers, where the label is hidden between the folds of the fabric and recognition comes only from those who truly understand. But here is the secret. You do not need a piece worth €1,000 to live with this mentality. You need intention. When I choose a linen shirt, it is not for the brand name. It is because linen breathes, ages well, and has accompanied me for years without losing elegance. When I wear my 5 pairs of shoes, yes, only 5, it is because each one has a purpose. Nothing is there by chance. And that, dear, is more luxurious than any crowded closet. The daily practice of intention. Every Friday, I practice kakebo, the Japanese domestic financial control. I sit at the table with my tea, open my notebook, and review the week. It is not about counting pennies. It is about understanding where my life is going. Because money is energy, and misdirected energy is waste. When you spend without thinking, you are telling the universe, I do not know what I want. When you choose with intention, you are saying, I know exactly who I am. I use the 3-jar financial system that I learned over the years: needs, growth, and generosity. Everything that comes in is divided into these 3 pillars. And look, since I started doing this, I never again had that feeling of, where did the money go? Japanese minimalism is not about productivity or efficiency at all costs, but about living with purpose and intentionality in each small gesture of daily life. It is about waking up and making tea calmly, folding clothes as if thanking them for protecting you, cleaning the house as if taking care of yourself. These small rituals transform the ordinary into sacred, and when you live like this, you do not need much to feel complete. The emotional impact of space. There is a study showing that cluttered environments increase cortisol levels, the stress hormone. And look, I did not even need a study to know this. Just walk into a house full of clutter to feel the weight in your chest. Because visual disorder creates mental disorder. Each object out of place is a decision you still need to make. And if you have hundreds of objects without a place, you have hundreds of pending decisions. This exhausts you. When you clean the physical space, you are cleaning the mental space. And this is not a metaphor. It is neuroscience. Your brain processes everything in the visual field. If there is too much information, it gets overloaded. If there is clarity, it relaxes. I had a designer friend who was always complaining about anxiety. She took medication, went to therapy, but nothing worked. Until one day she asked me for help organizing her home office. And when we walked in there, I understood everything. The desk was covered with papers, Post-its, pens, magazines, fabric samples. It was impossible to work there. We spent an entire afternoon organizing. We created thematic drawers. We digitized documents. We discarded what was no longer useful. In the end, the desk had only the computer, a notebook, and a pen, nothing else. A week later, she called me. She said that for the first time in months, she was able to work without that feeling of always being behind. The physical space had changed. And with it, the emotional space too. Freedom is in detachment. Some people think minimalism is about deprivation, that it is about living in a white and cold house, without personality, without life. But that is not minimalism. That is emptiness without purpose. True minimalism is about curation. It is about choosing what stays. And this choice is an act of power, because when you know exactly what matters, no one can sell you what you do not need. I apply the ritual of 5 objects in each environment of my house. Each room has a maximum of 5 decorative items, no more. And these 5 items need to pass the test of 3 questions. Is it useful? Is it beautiful? Does it tell a story? If yes, it stays. If not, it goes. No guilt. No drama, no, but it was a gift from Aunt. Because keeping something you do not love, just out of politeness, is disrespect to yourself. And look, this practice changed my relationship with consumption. Today, before buying anything, I wait 30 days. If after that time I still want it, I buy it. But do you know how many times that happens? Almost never. Because desire, most of the time, is fleeting. And when you give it time to dissipate, you realize you did not need that. The invisible luxury of time. Do you know what is really expensive these days? Time. Not the time you have, but the time you can actually live. Because what good is having a free schedule if your mind is crowded? I know women who live running, from commitment to commitment, from task to task, always busy, always tired. And when I ask what they are building with all this rush, they do not know how to answer. They are just busy, and occupation is not purpose. Minimalism taught me to slow down, to say no to what does not make sense, to protect my time as if it were the most valuable asset, because it is. Today, I have entire mornings without commitment. And this is not laziness. It is luxury. I use this time to practice Japanese calligraphy, which I learned in adolescence. Each stroke is an exercise in presence. You cannot be thinking about the shopping list while drawing a character. You need to be there, whole, in that moment. And that is rare these days, being whole in a single place. Sustainability as a natural consequence. When you live with less, you consume better. It is not an activist choice. It is a natural consequence of having clarity about what matters. The quiet luxury movement has allied itself with sustainability, prioritizing durable and timeless pieces instead of disposable trends, a reflection of a behavior change that values quality over quantity. I buy less. But when I buy, I choose pieces that will last. I prefer a linen shirt that costs more, but that I will wear for 10 years, than 5 cheap t-shirts that will fade on the second wash. This is not just financial intelligence. It is respect for the planet. Because every time you discard something, you are generating impact. And if you buy with intention, you discard less. My son Kenji, who grew up seeing these practices at home, now applies minimalism in his life. He is at university and told me the other day that classmates found it strange that he always wears the same 3 pairs of pants. And do you know what he answered? I do not need more. And this way I save money for what really matters. This is the generation we are raising. A generation that understands that having less is not poverty. It is freedom. The true meaning of abundance. There is a question I ask all women who come to me wanting to organize their house. What is abundance to you? Most answer with versions of having everything I need. But when I go deeper, I realize the real answer is different. Abundance is not having everything. It is not needing much. It is waking up and knowing that your bedsheet is organic cotton, soft, that will last for years. It is opening the closet and seeing only clothes you actually wear and that make you feel good. It is sitting at the dining table without having to remove 15 decorative objects before resting your plate. Wabi Sabi invites us to find joy in simplicity, in modesty, and to accept the inevitable impermanence of life, honoring the marks of time as part of the authentic beauty of things. My mother, after adopting minimalist practices influenced by me, told me something I will never forget. Naomi, I spent my life thinking I needed more to be happy. Now I realize I was running away from myself. And that is it. Excess is a form of escape. When you are always buying, always reorganizing, always looking for the next object that will complete your life, you are never present. You are always in the future, chasing a version of yourself that does not need to exist. The silent revolution of living well. There is a phrase I heard in the series Succession, which became a reference for discreet luxury in recent years. If you need to say you are rich, you are not. And this applies to everything. If you need to show off to prove value, maybe you are proving it to the wrong person. The series Succession popularized the aesthetic of discreet luxury, showing characters who wear expensive brands, where elegance is in the details imperceptible to those who do not understand. But look, you do not need a fortune to live with elegance. You need discernment. And discernment is cultivated with time, observation, and intention. It is choosing a beautiful cup for morning coffee instead of using any mug. It is placing fresh flowers on the table once a week. It is lighting a candle at dusk, not because you have visitors, but because you deserve it. These small gestures are revolutionary. Because they say, I deserve beauty, I deserve calm, I deserve to live well, every day, not just on special occasions. The invitation to a lighter life. If you made it this far, I hope something resonated. Because this conversation is not about convincing you to throw everything away and become a radical minimalist. It is about inviting you to reflect. What are you accumulating? And why? What are you chasing? And for what? Because in the end, when you remove all the excess, what remains is life, real life, the one that does not need a filter, proof, external validation, the life that is yours, only yours. And this life, dear, is more than enough. It is abundant. It is rich. It is beautiful. It is everything. If you enjoyed this conversation and want to continue cultivating a life with more lightness, sophistication, and intention, subscribe to the channel, turn on notifications, and leave a like. We are together on this journey of learning to live with less, but with much more charm, much more beauty, and much more presence. And before you go, Tell me in the comments. Is less freedom for you? Leave your answer here if you enjoyed the video. Until the next conversation. And remember, the Japanese art of living with little is, in fact, the art of living a lot. Very well. Very intentionally. Very truly. A hug, Naomi.